Our next thing to talk about is Penn State and Purdue. Now, we're going to do a preview a little bit different tonight. What we're going to do is Justin and I are each going to give one mistake that each team cannot make in tonight's game. So we'll start with Penn State. Justin, what is your one mistake Penn State cannot do against Purdue?
Yep. And we kind of talked about this beforehand, that we have very similar things. They need to just avoid letting Purdue hang around. I think one of the biggest things is just make sure that they attack offensively, and they need to prove themselves, right? They need to prove consistency. They need to come out and they need to perform in a way that makes you feel like they beat Purdue in the way they should. And they haven't done that with a lot of teams this year. So I think this is a statement game for them to come out and be like, yeah, we do belong, as much as they can prove that against Purdue. But if you let Purdue hang in there, it's not going to go well for you according to the eye test in that regard. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, for me, I had don't play around with Purdue, right? Play against the perception. Don't play against Purdue. We have a common opponent now between Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State. Ohio State beat them 45-0. Oregon beat them 35-0. Indiana's going to play them here soon, so this is going to be one of the only common opponents. It's not a great common opponent, but still, you have to show dominance against this team.
Yes.
And let's be honest, this is a dead team walking in Purdue. This is not a very good football team. This is a team that is going to be disrespected for the rest of the season. And, that's kind of what my mistake has to do with. Where my mistake for Purdue is just fire Ryan Walters already. I mean, we talked about it in the one episode where it was like, we kind of understand maybe not firing coaches as quickly now. I have a theory that like with the pain of the players from the school, maybe you save some of that and you don't pay the buyouts as much. I have that theory a little bit, but this is not a big buyout. Ryan Walters is a bad coach. He is just he's done everything he can. Credit to him. He's done everything he can with calling plays and doing all that kind of stuff, but he's just a bad coach. You can't say, oh, he's got a good recruiting class coming in. You can't say, oh, you got these young players. There is something respectable about a 4-8 record, a 5-7 record, where it's like, we saw some promise. We'll give you another year. You saw no promise this year. 0 FBS wins. Ryan Walters has got to go. Do not keep Ryan Walters around after this game. Fire him right after the game. The Monday press conference should not have Ryan Walters there. What do you think?
Unbelievable. Justin? It's unbelievable he's still there. I mean, we kind of predicted this offseason. I mean, Ryan Walters, in my opinion, I've never thought he was a good head football coach. I just didn't think he was going to fit in there. I have an animosity. It's Nebraska fans. We have animosity towards Ryan Walters. So there's a little bit there, but just overall, like it's just kind of like you said, you're 1-8, right? You even go back to last year, some of the worst Nebraska teams I've seen, and I've seen abysmal football, but 1-8, like that's indefensible. And the fact that he still has a job right now is the fact that he coaches at Purdue probably is the one reason that it is that. But it's a matter of, who steps into the interim, and who does Purdue go get? But I don't think right now in the age of the NIL and modern college football, I do think there's an urgency too, because you're in an arms race of a new Big Ten, and you don't want to get lost in that shuffle and fall out of all the recruiting, races. Because this offseason he did have a top 30 recruiting class. And so you don't want to, start to lose those things. So maybe it's, if you do, change out that staff, you do want to get them on the road and talking to those recruits and get them out and talking to the people who are committed. So hopefully they got a plan in place, but right now it's not looking good. It's pretty late in the season, to start thinking about that and talking about that. So,
yeah. Was that your mistake to avoid too? Was don't keep Ryan Walters?
So, for Purdue, sorry for that. No, it's I was just kind of bouncing it off of what you said, but
no, you're good.
I think they have to avoid holding on to the ball too long. I just think they have to get quick hitting routes, get in a rhythm, because the longer they hold on to that ball, the more Penn State's going to get after them with the pass rush, and that's going to be a really, really bad day. And so you just got to do whatever you can to get rhythm throws, quick throws, get the ball moving as much as you can, and try to just limit some of those pass rushers. That's one of, maybe get those pass rushers kind of pinning their ears back and try to get some runs up the middle. It's going to be a long day for Purdue though.
Yeah. It's going to be troublesome. There could be some things they could do to maybe look respectable, but at the end of the day, Abdul Carter is going to be a menace. I would not be surprised if he has 2 or 3 sacks in this game. At least could be more. Could be more than that.
Agreed.
So. All right, Justin, let's go ahead. Don't worry, Dylan. I saw you wanted us to skip that game, so we're going through quick. All right. We got Rutgers and Maryland. Maryland is favored in this one by 6.5 over Rutgers. The over under on this one is 50. And oh, I forgot score prediction. Let's do score prediction really
Oh
fast.
yeah.
Score prediction for Penn State and Purdue. My score prediction is 38-3. What's your score prediction, Justin?
Go 35-7.
35-7.
35-7.
Okay. All right, now let's move on.
Score a touchdown on the scripted driver late.
Yeah, something like that. All right, Rutgers and Maryland. Like I said, Maryland favored in this one. Rutgers is coming off the big win. Maryland is coming off competing against Oregon, but of course Oregon pulled ahead late, so there is a little bit of promise there. But we've seen this story before from Maryland, right? We've seen Maryland battle with the team late in the season, and they come back after that, and it's same old with Maryland. So Justin, what is your key? Let's start with Rutgers. What is your key mistake to avoid for Rutgers?
Rutgers' entire offensive system under Kirk Shiroka is about playing off of your run game. And one of the things that they have to do, and this was my key when they played Nebraska, that Nebraska needed to do was get out to an early lead, preferably a couple digits, and turn Ethan Kaliakmanis into a pocket passer. And if you can do that, you can control Rutgers pretty easily. And so I think that's what it's going to be from them, is just limit that run game, force Kaliakmanis to be a pocket passer, and that's how that's been the success on beating Rutgers this year. It's just with the way Soroka likes to run his offense, he likes to run the run action pass and the RPOs off of those kind of outside zone concepts, and he likes to bring the same exact looks in terms of blocking, but he'll run an RPO instead of an outside zone, but everything's going to look similar. He's good at that. But if you bring them out of that and turn him into a pocket passer, he's not going to be able to run those systems that Kirk Shiroka really thrives off of. So that's my key for them.
Yeah, good game from Ethan Kaliakmanis this last week against Minnesota. Minnesota came in with a really good pass defense,
Yeah.
and it was a great job by Ethan Kaliakmanis to overcome that. My key in this one is actually going to be in the run game. I want to see Rutgers run to the outside a lot. I felt like they had a good amount of success against Minnesota in that game, and honestly, Maryland, even though they're not the most skilled defensive tackles in the world, they got two pretty big dudes in the middle there, both 315 pounds or more, sitting there in the middle. So it's going to be really hard to run the ball up the gut, especially if you don't have Kyle Monangai. We'll see what happens there. I know Bailey is out for the season, but I think there's still a question that Monangai could come back. But even if it's not him, I want to see them get outside the tackles, run to the outside. There's been a good amount of success by Oregon and USC doing the same thing against Maryland this season. So, and I think you have to have that run game. I think they got away without the run game as much against Minnesota, but Ethan Kaliakmanis is a quarterback who needs to stay on schedule. So, and I like Dymere Miller, I like Ian Strong, but what we saw from them against Minnesota is not what you're going to see for the entire season. That was a good game they had, but it's not a reliable thing that they're going to do all season. All right, Justin, let's go to Maryland for your critical mistake they must avoid.
Maryland is self-inflicted errors. I mean, too many drops by the wide receivers, too many turnovers. Maryland does have the ability to put up points, and they do have athletes, and talk about Felton, he's been incredible this year, and it's just a matter of, last week, just way too many drops, couple turnovers, and for them to, against Rutgers, they're going to need to come out and they're going to need to put up, points early, in my opinion, and kind of like you were talking about, to take them out of that run. And so for them, they can't let Rutgers hang around by turning the ball over. They need to really kind of put their foot down and kind of put them away, because Rutgers can be physical. And they can potentially give Maryland some problems if they don't. So I think Maryland just needs to play a very clean game.
Yep, I agree. For me, the thing they have to avoid is overcomplicating or just not executing on third down. That's been a huge thing for Maryland this season. Their inability to convert on third down, especially when they're having Billy Edwards drop back to pass. Listen to these numbers for Billy Edwards on third down. 60% passing, 7 yards per attempt, 0 passing TDs, 3 interceptions, 6 sacks. He's ran it a little bit, but not very well. Those numbers are pretty bad because of the sacks and stuff like that. But he has 1 rushing TD on third down. It's not been good. On third and goal, he's 0 for 2 in passing with 2 sacks. So It's not good on third down. They have got to figure out something to do. I feel like sometimes they try to get a little bit too cute with what they're doing on third down. Just go with all reliable. Billy Edwards has got to find somebody reliable that he can throw to on third down, and just don't overcomplicate it. Just
Yep.
run your offense, make it happen, especially in those longer situations. But again, you cannot, like, you can't have a running game where you're getting into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6 all the time. You have to get into 3rd and 4 or less to help Billy Edwards out.
Yep. And the way Rutgers defense works, they like, what they lack in speed, they like to funnel guys to other players. So that's one thing too. Maryland needs to operate in space and not let them do that, not let the Rutgers defense funnel them where they want them to go.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Let's go with score predictions on this one. Justin, I'll let you go first again. Maryland Rutgers score prediction.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take Rutgers in this one. I'm going to take Rutgers. I'm going to say, I'm going to go 24-21.
That's honestly, I had the same exact thing, and I said, whatever Justin picks, I'm going to go with the opposite team. So I'm going to go with Maryland in this one, 24-21. I could see maybe another field goal, maybe making it 27-24, something like that. But I think we're going to be around that range. I think this will be a very close game. I think if you are looking for a game to watch and there's something close, I think this is going to be one of those games that you're going to want to tune into just to see, a good game at the end of it where two teams are close.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Hey, we're going to hit a commercial really fast, and then we're going to come back and talk about Michigan State and Illinois. I see a lot of Husker chat in the chat. Don't worry. We will get to Nebraska and USC. There's a lot to talk about in that game. So we'll be right back. Stay with us. Have you ever wanted to watch all 22 film, that film the coaches watch? Well, now you can. Introducing the Coaches Film Room. Over at Minutes to Sports, former college coach Zack Smith breaks down film of the most relevant teams in college football with a bit of a Big Ten lead. It's not free, so you'll need to sign up for the Colonel tier, which is $25 a month, but I can attest to you that it is far more worth it than that. With about 4 to 8 games per week, this is worth so much more money, not to mention Zach's analysis, making you a smarter football fan. Go check it out. The links are in the description, minutestosports.com. You won't be sorry. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, we appreciate all of you sticking with us. We do want to remind you to please do like and subscribe. It helps the podcast and everything going on YouTube. And if you're not watching on YouTube, if you're listening on podcast, give us a 5-star rating. Let everybody know that the Big Ten does have podcasts as well. Honestly, there's a ton of SEC podcasts out there. That's one of the reasons why the SEC has done such a good job with promoting their teams, is because they have so much media out there. Heck, they got ESPN in their entire back pocket. So, help us out. Let's get some good Big Ten content out there. Remind people there's good teams in the Big Ten as well. All right, Justin, let's talk about Michigan State. I should probably change the graphic to Michigan State. That would help. Let's talk about Michigan State and Illinois. Now, Illinois was kind of a darling of the Big Ten. They were ranked and they beat Nebraska, but then they came back and they lost. They lost to Penn State, so that kind of derailed things a little bit. But they started to win again. They beat Michigan. Things were looking good. And in the past 2 weeks, they were down a little bit. They lost 2 games in a row, and so now they're trying to get back on a little bit of a turn here. They are favored in this one by 2.5. It's a little bit closer of an odds than I thought there would be. But let's start with Michigan State, Justin. Michigan State has got to figure something out. 4 wins so far on the season. If they want to be bowl eligible, they have got to win this game. This is one of the games they have left that they can win. What mistake does Michigan State need to avoid?
I think they just need to avoid turning the ball over. Illinois' defense, when they were winning, was very, very opportunistic. And so Michigan getting off the field on third down, Illinois likes to sustain drives. They really like to bring heavy sets, and they like to use the H-back in a myriad of different ways. I did a film review a while back after we played them on the way they like to operate, but they bring things out of the same formation. And so Michigan State is, going to have to make sure that they try to keep their defense off the field as much as possible. And get off the field on third down, avoid the turnovers. I think that's going to be the key, because Illinois, if Illinois can get you on your heels, that's when they have success.
Yeah, that's very close to mine, actually close to my Illinois one as well. But for me, Michigan State, they have got to avoid being afraid to sell out against the run. I know Luke Altmaier has had a good season, but honestly, ever since that Nebraska game, he's not been nearly as dominant as he was. He had that game against Penn State, which wasn't bad. I still think he did okay, but the offensive line kind of failed him in that one. And so for me, Michigan State, they have got to not let Illinois' rushing attack beat them. Michigan State has won their 4 games when they stop the run. Teams have averaged less than 100 yards rushing per game in those 4 games that they won. And if you take out Caleb Johnson's 175-yard touchdown run that they had against him, they've averaged less than 75 yards per game against Michigan State when they've run. And like I said, Luke Altmaier, since Nebraska, he's been sacked 4 times per game and only has 1 game with multiple touchdown passes. That game was against Purdue. So not exactly the best defense in the world he was facing. I still think Luke Altmaier is a talented quarterback. I'm not saying sleep on him by any means, but you got to roll with what you've been seeing lately. And what I've been seeing is Michigan State does better when teams are not running all over them. And if Luke Altmaier is not going to take over throwing the ball, you've got to figure out a way to stop the run. And you got to make Luke Altmaier beat you with the pass. All right, let's go to Illinois, Justin. What is your mistake to avoid for Illinois?
I countered that with Illinois needs to establish a run. They need to establish their game plan, run the ball, and set up their offense, because everything works as an extension of their run game. I think what really hurt them was losing. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on his name. I've talked about him so much. Their running back, who's like,
McCray.
Yeah. No, their starter who went out.
Was it Fagan? No.
Caden Fagan.
Okay. I keep getting mixed up because one of them transferred to Purdue. Was it Love? Love transferred to Purdue.
Yeah. Caden Fagan. Because he was a big part of that. I mean, he's a big dude, and he was just, while they weren't averaging a ton of, yards per carry, it turned into chunk plays. Like against Nebraska at the end, towards the later part of the game, they were just kind of establishing that run game. They got Nebraska on their heels with the quick passing game. So yeah, everything's going to come off of that run. That's going to be their best route to victory, is just trying to get that going. Yeah. Luke Altmaier, as good as he is, there are limitations, and he does need the system to kind of be working towards his strengths.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Exactly what I was saying about Michigan State. So it's going to be a battle there in the run game. So I'm going to counter your Michigan State needs to not turn the ball over with Illinois has got to be super aggressive in this game, trying to get turnovers. I don't care if Michigan State gets a big play here and there. I think that Illinois' offense is going to be able to score on Michigan State's defense enough that you can afford giving up a big play here and there. You have got to be super opportunistic. That was one of the reasons why why Illinois was able to defeat Nebraska, because they were able to get turnovers in that game. It was huge for them, and honestly, that's been how Illinois has won a lot of these games. They had 0 turnovers against Minnesota, or 0 turnovers forced against Minnesota, and only 1 against Oregon, and that one was when it was already 35-9 in the game, so it didn't really do all that much for you. But they're averaging more than 2 takeaways per game in the games that they win. So if you're Illinois, you've got to figure out a way to get this opportunistic defense, whether it's interceptions, fumbles, whatever it is. You've got to figure out ways to force turnovers on a team on Michigan State that has been very prone to turning the ball over this year in multiple different ways. So got to figure that out if you want to get the win. Justin, what is your score prediction for this game?
Yeah, I'm going to say 28-17 Illinois.
28-17. All right, let me find mine really fast. I had, oh my, where is it at? There it is. Mine in this one was 27-17, and I think that Illinois is going to take this one. So much respect to Michigan State.
We're almost identical there too.
I know, right? I think they do have some good players, but I think Illinois is going to find the turnovers in this one, and they're going to be able to run the ball.
Pretty well coached team.
Yeah. I've been singing Brett Bielema's praises. I think that he's done a really good job.
Absolutely.
With Illinois. So, all right, let's move on to the next game here, Justin. We have Ohio State at Northwestern. Well, kind of at Northwestern. It's at Wrigley Field in this one. This is going to be an interesting game to watch. I've watched the Wrigley Field games in the past, and they're kind of fun to see, but it kind of goes into my mistake that Ohio State needs to avoid, which is just don't get anybody hurt. All right. Yeah. Ohio State should smack Northwestern. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Northwestern, but Ohio State should come in. They should play Northwestern very tough and beat them down. And once that starts happening, get those starters out as soon as possible. You almost had Will Howard and your left guard, Carson Hinsman, injured against Purdue. That would have been heartbreaking, and a game that they really didn't even, I think Ohio State could have won that game with their backups. If you would have got your quarterback and another offensive lineman hurt for Ohio State, that would have been detrimental to the season, would have been very bad. So Ohio State, with how close the walls are to the end zone, with the sod and what they've been doing with the infield and how that has looked the past few years, or the past few years that they played the game, just get in there, get up by 2 or 3 scores, put the backups in, and let them take care of it. If I'm Ryan Day in this one, 2 3 scores is enough for me to put the backups in and say, ride them to victory. We don't need a 30-point win in this one. Just win by 20, win by, even 14 is okay.
Yeah.
Don't injure the starters. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I think one of the things for Ohio State, because when prepping for the Nebraska game, I watched the Ohio State offensive film versus the Iowa defense, and what they did well in that game was they come out with a variation of different runs, but they run them out of the pistol, they run them out of the offset, and what they do is they'll set everything up off of that. That using motions to come across to manipulate how many defenders you have in the box or manipulate players away from the play, or you have your blind blocking like it's a run going to the right and you move the pocket left and you pass it out on a little dump pass, taking the underneath and then setting up the explosive play. So I think just they need to avoid going away from what works for them. And I think they just need to get after attacking the run game, get those motions going to get the defenders flowing away from the play, get what Will Howard into his rhythm throws. And I think they control the game from there.
I agree. What's your Northwestern don't do?
Avoid the explosive play. Your best hope in this is to shorten the game and try not to let Ohio State put up points, in bunches. You're going to want to keep everything in front of you and try to get off the field on third down. That's the only hope to keep this close.
Yeah. I went a little bit of a different direction. I figured, assuming this is a blowout, like I think it's going to be with Northwestern, don't run Jack Lausch too much. Okay. Don't try to play hero ball. I mean, Ohio State has already injured 3 starting quarterbacks so far this season. They hit hard and they are going out for blood. I mean, how amped they are, and they are going to try and be amped for the Indiana game and everything going on. So, I mean, I'm not saying they're out there targeting quarterbacks or anything like that, but just what they've been trying to do with how hard they've been playing this year. Quarterbacks have been getting injured against Ohio State, and just protect Jack Lausch. He is your future at Northwestern. Yes. You need to keep him safe in this one. So, all right, my score prediction in this one, I actually think that Ohio State is going to do the thing where they put the backups in a little bit earlier, so I can see this maybe not being as big of a blowout as I anticipate it might be. So I'm going to go 38-10. I think Northwestern does get a late time touchdown. They also get a field goal, and Ohio State scores a little bit with their backups, but for the most part, it's a pretty snoozer game in my mind. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I have 42-13. So same spread. But I think similarly to what you said, I think Ohio State can pull out to a lead and get some guys out of the game. And I found it hard to give Northwestern 13, but I feel like they might just be able to sneak some in against the backups or something.
Yeah. Tony is saying, do you think the Badgers win? We will get to the Badgers as our last game. We have Washington, UCLA, Nebraska, USC, and then we'll talk about Oregon, Wisconsin. So hang with us, Tony. We'll talk Badgers and Ducks. No worries. Well, that's quite the battle there. I didn't even think about that. The Badgers and Ducks battle. All right, let's talk.
I don't know if he's going to like my pick.
Let's talk some UCLA and Washington in this one. It's a home game for Washington. Washington has been much better at home than they've been on the road this season, so Washington does have that in favor. However, they did just get completely blown out, and fans are starting to question the quarterback situation for Washington and what they need to do. Jed Fish did say after the game that they would start Will Rogers, and I don't think he was lying about that. I think that is the plan, but for me, in this one, if Will Rogers comes out and starts throwing interceptions and maybe not looking so hot again, you have got to not be too careful about putting dead DeMond Williams in the game. I know that it's one of those things where, like, Will Rogers, actually, he hasn't been bad this season. They've had penalties and they've been not so great in the red zone at times. And so things like that have kind of held back the numbers. But I feel like Will Rogers has been pretty good. But you have got to get DeMond Williams ready. He's a freshman. You have got to keep him happy. And what's Washington playing for this season? I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but what are they really playing for? At this point, a bowl game? Like, I mean, I get it. You want to go to a bowl game, but for me, I think it'd be better to give DeMond Williams the snaps, show him that they believe in him as the future of this team. And I hate it for Will Rogers, man. I want Will Rogers to have a good end to his senior year. And I get that it's senior night and everything, but I mean, I feel like you got to go with DeMond Williams if Will Rogers starts to struggle. So you can't be afraid to go to him. What's your thing to avoid for Washington?
For Washington, for me, when they've struggled, like against Rutgers, they put up a ton of yards, like you said, just ineffective in the red zone, and they didn't convert on third down. 2 for 12 against Rutgers in the red zone or on third down. And their special teams is not very good, not very consistent. So just to narrow it down to one thing, though, I'm going to say take advantage of your opportunities. Take advantage of your opportunities in the red zone because, UCLA showed against Nebraska that they can be sneaky. If you let them, they will be sneaky. If you don't take advantage of opportunities, they get some confidence, and I don't want to talk about that game too much, but I think that's the biggest thing for Washington. Just take advantage of the opportunities when you get them, because, like I said, their field goal kicking has been inconsistent. So you need to get points when you get down the field. If you have 500 yards, scoring 17 points isn't going to cut it. So take advantage of those opportunities and limit your mistakes.
Yeah, I read a post from a Washington fan the other day on one of their message boards, and he had done the statistical analysis and said that the field goal kicker this year at Washington is the worst field goal kicker they've ever had in the 21st century. So
he was 1 for 4 in the game against Rutgers, I believe, or it was either Rutgers or Purdue, but he's 1 for 4. Yeah, it's bad. He was 1 for 4 the same week Nebraska went 1 for 4. So.
Yeah, it was not good. So it's actually not been very good all season. So there have been a couple games here and there where he's done well, but it's not a good situation. So, all right, let's talk UCLA. Justin, I'll let you go first on UCLA here. That way I don't steal your pick because we might have the same pick. I'm not sure, but you go ahead.
Well, just with UCLA for me, what they need to avoid, and I think is just getting out of, what they did against Nebraska. I think they stuck to their game plan effectively, and I think they just need to do that. I think UCLA is a team that has one way to win, and that's with the game plan that they brought out against Nebraska. It was a very simple yet effective game plan, and it worked. And I think as long as they stick to what they do, I don't think there's a lot of variation in this offense. I don't think there's a lot, but what Garbers was able to do is he was just attacking the void in the defense. In cover 2, he was just attacking those little areas, and the void, just taking what the defense was giving him, wasn't trying to do too much, and just kept moving the ball down the field and scoring. I just think UCLA needs to stick to that, try to find holes in the defense, exploit those different coverages, because they're not going to have an advantage against most teams in terms of talent. So they got to exploit them with the X's and O's.
Yeah. I think that's a really good thought there, and it kind of goes into mine, which is don't abandon the run game too early.
Yeah.
This has been a hard part for UCLA throughout the season, is the run game and them not being able to get very much. But the past 2 weeks, TJ Harden has done better. He had his best game averaging yards per carry. This last game, 6.3. It was the first time he got over 4.2, which 4.2 is how many he had in the game against UCLA, or in the game against Nebraska. So he's been steadily getting better the past 2 weeks, and I think that you have got to let him run and try to get as much yardage as he can. And they've kind of dropped off from him at about 10 or 11 carries if the run game isn't going well. I don't think you can do that against Washington, because Washington, even though things did not look good against Penn State, I do think they have an okay pass defense, and I think that pass defense will be able to hinder Will Rogers or Damon Williams, especially will be able to hinder Ethan Garbers. And so especially in this situation, you got to make sure you're sticking with the run, and things will open up eventually. Just keep trying it. You saw it against Iowa in particular. Your offensive line can run block. You can make it happen. So that's my thing to avoid there. Justin, we'll start with you for score prediction. What you got?
So I've been back and forth on this one, but I think I'm going to go Washington 28, UCLA 20.
Washington 28, UCLA 20. I think in this one, all the numbers suggest Washington should win. I mean, you look at Washington's numbers, they have very good numbers this season. What kills them is the red zone conversion. What kills them is the penalties and all those things. I think because Washington is at home, they're going to win this one. I would not be surprised if UCLA gives them their first loss at home this season. But I do think that Washington will win this one. The home field advantage is going to be huge for them. They're playing for a bowl game. They know in 2 weeks they're going against Oregon. I think it's at Oregon. And that's going to be, a very hard opportunity to get to a bowl game in. So I think they're going to win this one. I think they're going to win it. I would say probably 24-17. I think they'll probably win it. I don't know if I see them getting past 24 points against UCLA with the way their run defense has been playing, but we'll see.
I couldn't give them a field goal just because, when I was predict a Nebraska score as I was trying my best not to give them field goals because I know we're not capable of kicking them. So Washington's right there in the same boat. So,
well, that's been interesting because they've talked about it on almost every game. Like, oh, Jed Fish can't go for a field goal here, but he still trots him out there. Like,
no, he does.
even
Yeah.
even though it's like, man, can you hit a field goal? He still trots him out there. So, I mean, maybe they trot him out there 5 times and he hits one. I don't know.
Hey, UCLA, there's your trick. Just keep them out of the end zone, man. You just make them, if they're going to roll them out there, try to force them out there as much as possible. Just don't let them beat you over the top.
Exactly.
Make them kick 3.
Exactly. LFG is giving me some compliments here, so I got to bring that on the screen. He says JR has good instincts. 2 times earlier this season, the Huskies QB2 came in and gave Washington a spark. Yeah, I think almost anything would have given the offense a spark against Penn State. So
yeah, true.
I'll take it though. I'll take it.
Good point.
And then Philip, very true. UCLA is sneaky.
Yes.
They are. They are playing much better football now than they were at the beginning of the season. That's one of the reasons why I said like the numbers suggest Washington because UCLA was not as good at the beginning of the season. But boy, they had a tough schedule this year, man. UCLA at the beginning of the season, we were talking one of their only wins might be Indiana.
It's crazy.
When one of your easiest games on the schedule we thought was is now a team that's 10-0. It's like
number 5 team in the country. Yeah, it's a little.
It's like,
this has been a crazy year. Let's just put it that way. It
has. Jeffrey and I were talking about that on the last show about like this year's like putting 2007 to bed. You know?
Oh my God, dude! This has been nutty. It's just so much chaos going on this year.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everybody, we are going to hit another commercial break really fast, and then we'll talk Nebraska, USC. We'll get into Dana Holgorsen, Jaden Maava, all that stuff, and then we'll talk about the big game. Oregon, Wisconsin, right after that. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Home Field is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Home Field brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Home Field digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, we appreciate everybody being with us. Hey, check out the basketball channel. We got basketball episodes on Thursday nights. If you are a basketball fan, I know there's many IU fans that watch this show. So if you enjoy basketball, as I'm sure many of you IU fans do, please check that out. You can go to the link that's in the description. We also live stream those shows here on this channel. So if you're subscribed here, you won't miss it. But it is nice to have more subscribers over on the basketball centric channel where we do game recaps and all that stuff. So go subscribe over there. We really appreciate it. All right. I'm going to let you kind of lead this one, Justin. I feel like I have a little bit of thoughts on Holgorsen and what's going on, but I think that, you've obviously watched this team all season. You kind of know more of what the need was to bring Holgorsen in with Satterfield, which, my biggest thing was the press conference when he didn't know how many yards per play. I was like, oh my gosh, that's fireable right there.
And you might have missed the part where he said, I'm starting to learn that you need to establish the run to win in the Big Ten. In the same press conference. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I heard about that. I didn't see that clip, but I heard he questioned something about like the run in the Big Ten. I was like, yeah, that's so cringe.
Yeah, he's been living under a rock, apparently.
Well, good news. Dana Holgorsen is here to save Nebraska. Tell me, what is your thing? I assume it's something about Holgorsen. What is your thing to avoid for Nebraska?
Yeah, well, for me, it's for Nebraska. It's avoiding the setting up only deep routes and avoiding this. It's hard to just say avoid one thing because it's a myriad of things that have caused the offensive issues. And what Satterfield hasn't done is he hasn't adjusted his offense at all. There's no identity to the offense. And so it looks like he's throwing darts at a play sheet week to week. There's no specific running back rotation. It doesn't make sense. And you're moving Raiola around and running 30-yard routes down the field with no checkdowns on 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10, and leaving him in constant 3rd and longs, et cetera. For Holgorsen, what his offenses do well is, with the wider splits in the air raid, and I hear people talk about the air raid as this, just passing attack. That's nonsense. At West Virginia, 2016, one of his teams averaged over 200 yards on the ground. So he has, it's the modern college football is balance, right? And he's adapted the air raid to be balanced, to be more balanced. And with that, comes, a little bit wider splits from your offensive linemen, And you also, like, the whole goal of his offense is to spread the field out as much as possible and make the defenders cover grass. You want to be able to get your playmakers in space and get rhythm throws. So it's avoiding keeping the ball in Raiola's hand for too long. Right now, he just needs to get in a rhythm. I feel like he's kind of seeing ghosts back there, with a quarterback, calm feet equal calm mind. And right now, you can tell by the feet that he's not calm up here. He's seeing ghosts. When you start to throw picks to linebackers, that means you're not seeing the field very well. So put him in a situation to get rhythm throws and establish some kind of run game off of it. Get those plays going to the outside, so that way you open up that middle of the run game that the air raid is notorious for, and have those wide splits and be able to take advantage of that different element. But it's basically simplifying a lot of, just because you can't come in here and rework the entire offense. So he just needs to simplify a lot of the things for Dylan. All right. Right now, things are too complex and we're having execution issues all over the place. Our receivers aren't getting separations. Our route concepts are completely it's like they're seeing on film everything we're doing. The screens are getting blown up in the backfield. Anything laterally, not working. What he likes to do is he likes to attack and scheme up, guys to get open, multiple guys to get open. And then it's just putting your playmakers in a situation to succeed. And Satterfield hasn't done that. Satterfield has just kind of played blindly, ran his offense, but it's never had an identity. It's never been a run first offense, but it's also never been a pass first offense. It's just very unpredictable what we do. It's relying on the explosive plays. We have not been able to methodically drive down the field. There's no rhyme or reason to the running back rotation. If Holgorsen can come in and just kind of bring that into a little bit more of a simplified offense, then Nebraska can score points. Stop trying to get it all in one play. Stop trying to drop back and throw 30 yards, 40 yards every time Dylan gets the ball. Establish the run. Let him manage the game.
I agree. My thing with Dana Holgorsen is keep up the tempo, right? We've seen tempo from Holgorsen over the years with pretty much every stop he's been at. And I think that a tempo offense would really help Dylan Raiola in this one, because I totally agree. I think he's thinking too much. I think that he is trying to inspect the defense too much and every single throw. And then it turns into exactly what you said. He's seen ghosts. And for me, just give Dylan Raiola his play, let him go, let him work, and do some of this quick stuff that you were talking about, under the knee stuff to just get it to your playmakers and what they can do. And Nebraska does have good receivers. I mean, early on in the season, I was very much so in favor. One of the reasons why I felt like the interception that Illinois had against Nebraska was such a big play is because Nebraska does have really good receivers. And I was surprised that the DB was able to take that ball away from, I forget which receiver that was.
Isaiah Nair.
Yeah, Nair.
Isaiah Nair.
And so for me, like it's been kind of interesting to see the downward trend of throwing to the receivers, but I think that it's still there. I think that Nebraska has hungry players. I think a bowl game really would mean a lot to them. I think it would mean a lot to Matt Rule in the program, and so I think they're going to be playing very hard for that in this one, and by evidence of bringing Holgorsen in, because Matt Rule could have just mailed it in and said, we'll bring Holgorsen next year. But no, he really wants that bowl game. He wants to make it happen, not just for the players, but for the fans as well. The fans are starting to question Rule a little bit. I don't think it's valid as much as maybe some think.
He's not even close. Like, I have not changed my opinion on Rule. I love what he's doing. Nebraska just flipped Dawson Merritt from Alabama today.
Exactly.
So, the things behind the scenes, that's usually the indication that people are still buying into the vision. What we're seeing out here is not what was happening behind the scenes, and what Matt Rule has done for that culture is, what's been the biggest
and we
thing.
Talked about that after the Indiana game, where I was like, folks, if you're a Nebraska fan, like, don't get mad at Rule on this one. Let him figure it out, because Rule's a smart coach. I thought the Satterfield hire from the beginning was a little questionable, and I'm thankful he's moved on from it, because I think that was really what they needed to do most of all. So, all right. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to point out, you were talking about air raid. All right, listen, people, if you hear somebody talking about air raid and saying, "Oh, air raid is just throwing the ball 80% of the time," please know this person does not understand what they are speaking about. And I'm not trying to act like I'm the biggest schematic guy in the world. Okay. I'm not one that's going to go break down film and stuff like that. I'm not the biggest schematic guy in the world, but I know enough to know that when somebody says, "Oh, an air raid offense is 80% of the time they're throwing the ball," how many people have called Phil Longo air raid? You know how many times percentage wise, Phil Longo runs the ball game? 52%.
Yep. Yep.
he can't be air raid if he's running it that often, or maybe he has air raid concepts that he's working in with, like you said, a balanced attack, because that's what you need in today's game of college football.
Yeah,
So
they
uh,
evolve, like
yeah,
schemes evolve, right? And
exactly.
maybe at some points they may have thrown 80% of the time, but you're not going to win a lot of games doing that.
Right.
So
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So let's talk about USC. USC has Jaden Mayava. These sanctions came down this week. I don't think that's really going to impact the game. If you think it does, Justin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But I think that really the bigger thing here is Mayava, Lincoln Riley coaching. I wouldn't say he's coaching for his job, but he's coaching for perception amongst the fans, because the fans are obviously not happy with the way this season has gone. Maybe Mayava could be their saving grace. I'm not sure, but what is your critical mistake that USC has to avoid?
yeah, for me, I think it's just turning for them. It's taking advantage of opportunities, and they haven't done that, and they've also killed themselves with penalties time after time. And so I think for them, it's going to be a matter of getting Mayava into a rhythm. I watched his some of his 2023 film. I have some UNLV film of his. I
He
watched
was
the
good.
Michigan game, the
He was
Nevada
very good.
game, and yeah, and there's some things that he's 40% of the time at UNLV, it was off the play action, right? And so he's very, very much a rhythm passer. Most of his passes are underneath the 10 yards, middle of the field. And so talking about getting to a rhythm, Mayava is a rhythm guy, right? Everything's RPO, like he's going to be bringing stuff off of play action. He's got a cannon of an arm, though, and he can be accurate with the deep ball. There's a throw against Nevada. I actually have it up. I don't know if I can pull it up, but it's a money throw about 50 yards down the field. He has a cannon of arms. Sometimes he throws too many fastballs over the middle and the receivers won't catch him. So I think it's just going to be scheming to his strengths as much as possible. And they just can't let the same issues that were happening with Miller Moss, the turnovers and not taking advantage of the opportunities they're given. Miller Moss, I think, had 10 interceptions and 24 turnover worthy plays. So it's just getting that out of there. And I don't think Jaden Mayava has to do too much. They have athletes on that team. Just let him comfortably come in and execute the offense and build from that. But make sure that you also, kind of get a run game going too, so you can build off of that.
Yeah. I agree a lot of that. My thing to not to avoid for them is to avoid just kind of the standard offense they've been running with Miller Moss. You have got to change things up. You made this change in the bye week, so that way you could try and change things up. I want to get Mayava on the move as much as I possibly can. He has the athleticism, he has the ability, and let's be honest, Lincoln Riley's offenses work best when the quarterback is not just standing in the pocket, especially at this team with an offensive line that is questionable and a defensive line for Nebraska. I know people are kind of down on Nebraska a little bit, but you should not be down on this defensive line. It is still a very good defensive line that has given teams fits all season long. So this is a situation where you need to be trying to get Mayava out of the pocket, some of these rollouts, some stuff like that. If you are going to have him in the pocket, you need to chip as much as possible on some of these edge players. You need to keep your running back. Woody Marks is a good pass blocker as a running back, so you need to be keeping him in a lot of the time and try to create some checkdowns somewhere else other than Woody Marks and what they've been doing there. So for me, get Mayava on the move and encourage some of the off-platform plays and encourage some of the, hey, if nothing's there, run for 2 or 3 yards. Do something to get positive yards. Stay on task or stay on schedule and do everything you can for that. So that's going to be the biggest thing I think USC is going to have to do. And I think this is going to be a really, really fun game to watch. I think that Nebraska is most likely going to win this game. My score prediction for them is going to be 28-24. I think it's going to be a pretty close game. I think Dana Holgerson is going to throw some things at him. I wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska gets up early in this one, like 14-0 or something like that. Maybe Dana Holgerson starts throwing some stuff at Deontay Lynn that he hasn't seen before. Maybe he gets a little confused by the players, and I think that's really going to benefit them to get up that early. I think Mayava is going to be a little bit of a slow start. I think Tony White's going to be better for it. So at the end of the day, I just think Tony White's a better defensive coordinator than Deontay Lynn. I mean, no disrespect to Deontay Lynn. I think Tony White's one of the best defensive coordinators in the nation. So I like Lynn as well, but I really believe in Tony White and what they've been able to do this season, even though maybe the numbers don't show it all the time, I still think it's been very good. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah. And to your point, Tony White, that's my key in this game too, because Tony White, for any time Nebraska has had an off game against Indiana, for instance, they changed against Ohio State and they went to more of a bear front. They were less susceptible on the inside. Every time Tony White's defense has gotten beaten, Illinois, for instance, he adjusts and he responds and they come out and they play well the next week. Both times that they've got exposed, that has happened. Tony White is a great coach. He's learning from the mistakes of this defense and is getting, more and more of those reps under his belt in terms of, molding his defense into a defense that can compete with, all of these different styles of offense. And I got a very similar score. I'm going to give us a field goal, but I was going to go 28. I was going to go 28-24, but I want to change it up. So I'll give us a field goal. I'll go 31. I'll go 31-24, just so it's not the same score.
You don't want to give them 2 field goals? You want to do 27?
No, I don't
or
want
a
them to
missed
be
extra
that,
point.
I just don't want them to be that close. Personally, that's just more wishful thinking on my part. But yeah, I just Tony White. You got to get pressure on Mayava, and because on the film against Michigan, they got pressure on him a lot, and his eyes go down a lot, and he stops looking at the field. Occasionally, he will keep his eyes up, but a lot of times his eyes goes down, and that's not good for a quarterback.
Yep, got to be watching that front of the helmet there and see what goes on there. So,
yep.
And this is what I was talking about, John, was Tony White, great DC. Indiana scored 56 on him. Like I
defense
said, the
gave
numbers,
up.
Yeah,
the defense gave up in that game. They admitted they gave up. They were like,
right.
we quit on ourselves.
Right. And also, too, I mean, you also have to look at the turnovers and how many times Matt Rule have gone for it on 4th down and stuff like that. So, yes, you do make a point, John. 56 points is not exactly a good record on any defensive coordinator, but I think there's context to that one, and I think you've seen enough good play from the defense throughout the year to say that was out of the ordinary. That's not something I'm going to say happened a lot this season, right?
We've seen way more consistent good from his defenses and a few outlier bads, and everybody just wants to point at those and say, oh, he's bad. Indiana fans will hate that I say this, but that score wasn't as bad as, I don't think Nebraska got beat as bad as that score indicated. I just think Indiana was so efficient that it just turned into that. Nebraska was the opposite of efficient, turning the ball over the red zone. They threw a pick in the end zone that went the other way over to the other side of the field. It's just self-inflicted mistakes, and they just lost all the by halftime. That defense just quit. And like I said, the players came out and admitted it. We gave up.
Right. It's not taking anything away from Indiana. Indiana did exactly
they're incredible.
To do, so
they beat the crap out of us. They would have won that game regardless. I mean, they beat the brakes off of us, but
I don't think they would have scored 56 if there's some better decision making. But still,
nuance matters. But I think it would have been a closer game. But the way Nebraska was just inconsistent offense, and Indiana's offense, man, that. They were attacking the outsides, and before that game, they were attacking the middle of the field. And I think that's what they did different against Nebraska, is they were attacking the sidelines a bit more. And I think Nebraska was ready for that.
Yeah, I pointed that out in that game. Was they attacked the middle of the field against Maryland, and it paid against them, and they needed to find a different way, because I didn't think you'd do that against Nebraska. And lo and behold, Kirk Sinnett is a good coach, and they figured it out. Who would have thought?
Yeah, right.
All right, well, let's move on to Oregon, Wisconsin. This is a game that we were asked to talk about earlier. Well, we were scheduled to talk about it already. No worries. So, Oregon and Wisconsin in this one. I think obviously Oregon is the favorite in this one, and I think that I don't think there's going to be very many people that pick against Oregon in this one. They're favored by 14.5. The over/under is 50.5 in this one, but I do think there is a lot to think about in this one, and there are a lot of things that Oregon's going to have to avoid, because I honestly believe if Oregon comes out and plays a B-level game in this one and Wisconsin plays to their best of their ability, Wisconsin will win. Right? I mean, for me, Oregon cannot sleep on Wisconsin. This is not Purdue that you're playing here. This is not some cupcake team that you can just stroll in there and take care of business. Honestly, Oregon hasn't really had a whole lot of road tests this season. Really, their only tough road environment they've been in was against Michigan, and it did rattle them a little bit. Now, they did what number one team in the nation is supposed to do. They still won by 21 points, but there was a little bit of concern at one point in that game where Michigan could possibly do something. They obviously didn't. Give credit to Oregon, but I still think that makes this game a little bit more to talk about. So, Justin, we'll let you go first. What's your thing that Oregon has to avoid in this game?
Not getting penalties. They had their worst game in terms of penalties last week, 12 for
Like
95
penalties.
yards.
Yeah. Oh
12 for 95 yards. And that is one of the ways that you're going to keep a team like Wisconsin in this game and potentially set up for an upset. You just can't beat yourself. And so they got to clean that up. I mean, 12 penalties for 95 yards. That is around what lost USC the game against Minnesota. And it wasn't even as bad as that. And so that, Oregon was good enough to outlast that, but they don't want to keep doing that week after week. And especially, as you kind of get towards this end of the season, those execution issues need to get cleaned up. And that needs to start against this Wisconsin team that they should beat.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me with Oregon, it goes into the penalties, but it also goes into some special teams area as well. Just don't get sloppy, right? Avoid the sloppy play. Come out, play a really, really good game. Look sharp in this one. This is probably their last big test of the season. Obviously, Washington's rivalry game, that's going to be a test in itself, but this is probably the most dangerous situation, I think, that Oregon is going to be in for the rest of the season. Don't get so sloppy with the penalties. Don't give up so many first. It felt like almost every single penalty was a first down for Maryland in that one, which was really beneficial to them. But they also had their second game in a row with a muffed punt. Now Oregon did fall on that one. That was helpful, but we saw what happened against Michigan. That kind of gave Michigan life when they muffed that punt. And honestly, Maryland probably would have had even more life if they had picked up that punt. So secure the ball and, don't get sloppy. And another big thing, this isn't so much my thing to avoid, but they got to find another target on third down with Tess Johnson out. I mean, they have a whole lot of dangerous playmakers out there, but Tess Johnson's no longer there. He had 60 some catches when he left for the season, and they're going to have to do their very best to try and figure out, is it Terrence Ferguson, is it Evan Stewart, whoever it is, find that guy for the rest of the season that you can rely on. Justin, we've got a big fan here in the chat. Sonny Verma, two of the most handsome
what's up,
men
Sonny?
covering college football right here. We appreciate it, Sonny. If it'd be three of the most handsome men if you were here, man.
Yeah, no. Where you at, buddy? Come on, hop in here. We're talking Illinois
Sonny, I think Sonny's gonna be on a basketball episode next Thursday, he said. So don't worry, we'll have another.
Check it out. I'll check it out.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so let's move over to Wisconsin now, Justin. What do they need to avoid in order to win this game?
Can't turn the ball over. Braden Locke threw 2 picks last week. 1 touchdown, 2 picks. I mean, they're going to have to be plus in the turnover margin, in my opinion, to have any opportunity to come close to winning this game. So yeah, it's just going to come down to don't turn the ball over. That's been their kryptonite when they start throwing the ball.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that turnover they had for against Penn State, that was kind of like the game-changing moment, right? Drew Aller wasn't in the game anymore, and Bo Prabula, I mean, they were moving the ball a little bit, but they were kind of struggling. And then once they got that turnover, Penn State scored, obviously, on the pick six, and kind of just went on from there. So the offense came alive for Penn State, so you can't let that happen. For me, the biggest thing that they need to avoid is trying to drop back and throw too much. I feel like Wisconsin has done this too much with Braden Locke. I feel like he is a much better, not just I feel like, the numbers suggest he's a much better passer off of play action rather than just straight dropbacks. And you have got to be running the ball well. Oregon has had struggles with the run defense a little bit this season, here and there. It's not been super evident, but you could capitalize on that if things are going well. So run the ball well with Tyree Walker, get Cade Yakamara, how you pronounce his name, I apologize, but get him out there as well, him get some big runs, and overall get Braden Locke dealing. Don't be too conservative. Throw some deep balls off of play action as well. Try to get those receivers involved. Vinny Anthony has been one of them. Will Pauling, try to get those guys involved with the deep balls. So Justin, your score prediction in this one, who do you have winning? Oregon, Wisconsin.
Oregon 35, Wisconsin 14.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for Wisconsin in this one to win. I do see a path for it to happen, but I'm actually going to go a little bit closer. I'm going to go 31-17 Oregon in this one. So, but road test, it's going to be an interesting one to see.
Yep.